Hello. Today I'm going to be reviewing the second, what you could consider album, though it really is just an EP from Estonian singer Kerli. This EP is titled Utopia, and it was released on March 13th, 2013. So first off, this was before Bjork's Utopia, so there's no ripoff there. It's a title that's used for a lot of, I thought was just very interesting when Bjork announced her album to be called Utopia because it reminded me of this EP by Kerli. Now, why is this an EP? Well, that is probably the most upsetting question that you could probably ask about this record. And there's a lot to discuss in the formation of this album because it was not supposed to be an EP. It was supposed to be a full length album with around 11, 12 songs. It ended up only having 6 songs plus a remix of one of the singles by an Estonian DJ. Was very disappointed to see how the rollout was handled by this from Island Records off of Island Def Jam, which is what she was signed to at the time. This is the record label that discovered her in the US, that put out her first album, Love Is Dead, but didn't promote it well at all. And with Utopia, the promotion was even worse. There was almost nothing. I wasn't terribly surprised that the promotion was terrible. They never actually sold physical copies of this EP outside of the Baltic countries, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and Finland. Otherwise, it was digitally everywhere else. She did perform on Dancing with the Stars in April of 2013. She performed this song, Love Me or Leave Me, where she was at the piano and there was a dance routine, which was very phenomenal and was one of the best performances that she's done live on television. And it was, of course, her first time being on American television. This was a huge spotlight for her. I was very proud of her to see her get that. So that was probably the only sort of saving grace from the promotion of this album. She did subsequently leave Island Records at the end of 2013, largely due to, of course, how they handled Utopia. Before I get into describing these 6 songs on the record, I do want to talk about the build up to this album. So if you've watched my Love Is Dead review, which I highly recommend you do, any Kerli fans who happen to have stumbled upon this channel, I'll link it in the description below. I did a very long review of the debut album Love Is Dead, which I love. And it made me fall in love with Kerli, and it made me a moonchild, which is a affectionate term that she has given to her fan base, as she likes to call us, moon children. And it's not like supposed to be some sort of hierarchical thing. It's just an affectionate term to describe a group of people who feel ostracized and more feminine and more intuitive and more sensitive and dark and more crepuscular. Following Love Is Dead, she knew she wanted to do something a little bit more pop. I mean, she'd moved to LA. She was starting to work with a lot of different songwriters, and she was actually starting to get into the circles of the Hollywood music industry. I mean, she was signed to Island Records, one of the biggest record companies in the US. This is a record company that has Justin Bieber and Rihanna. This is not a company that I think was well suited to Kerli, and I'm very glad that she left when she did. I'm sure Ultra Music, which she then signed to, she's no longer with Ultra Music, as she is currently on her own independent label, but she could have easily put out that full album as it suited much more of the musical style that she was going for. She was starting to get really interested in rave culture. She really liked EDM music. She really liked the fun of dance music and house music and club music. And that's what Utopia is built upon. The sound structure of it is very much composed around EDM rave DJ type sets. The electropop sound became more amplified. She still wanted to have that twistedness, that eeriness, as you can see by the album cover here, which was actually designed by Natalie Shaw and shot by Brian Ziff, who goes by the alias of Vespertine, who is a longtime friend and collaborator of Kerli's. And Natalie Shaw designed the artwork for her album Love Is Dead. So I do love that she collaborated with her once again to create a little bit more of a lighter and more airy album artwork cover, which I still think is quite iconic and interesting. And it kind of shows the soundscape and theme of this album is white castles and fluffy clouds and candy colors of pinks, pastels. The album was, in some ways, she talked a lot about being about air and being about lightness and freeness. Her song Zero Gravity, which was released as a promotional single, which unfortunately was never actually included physically on this album, though I personally include it because it definitely belongs there. I mean, it fits the theme of this album perfectly. Zero Gravity is about that utopian, ecstatic, rising above that darkness and feeling free and spreading your wings. If you see the music video, this song was released in March of 2012, and it was really just labeled as a buzz single, although it was originally going to be a lead single for this album. I include it as a part of it because it belongs in the Utopia family. Zero Gravity is an amazing song. I remember upon hearing it, it was this ecstatic rave song with dubstep EDM backings. At the time, I was really into it. Now, with age, I'm not as crazy about some of these songs, and I will get into that, but I just had to give credit where credit is due. The music video is still very Bjork, it's still very fantasy, inspired a lot by geisha costumes, and the costumes and designs. I mean, she made a lot of this herself. She is a DIY artist. She spent hours crafting, the dress that she wore, then the costumes, the set design. It was low budget, but she managed to pull it off. The green screens were well used. It didn't feel too cheesy or too low budget to the extent that it felt like it was campy. I mean, she was able to pull off a pretty high production visual with low. She's always been very good at doing this. Now, before Zero Gravity, she also released a song called Army of Love. This was definitely not supposed to be on Utopia. This was in the winter of 2010. The song was released digitally in April of 2011. She released it for free on her website before that, though, along with the music video. Army of Love was filmed in Estonia, and I find it a much more preferable song to Zero Gravity. It's a really powerful electro-pop dance record where she sings about building an army of love. It's like a call to action for moon children or light workers all over the planet to come together and form a coalition of love. There's a bit of a militaristic, sort of communistic almost message, and the imagery is filmed, ironically, at old Soviet camps and factories that are in a lot of Estonia. She found one near Tallinn, and she was able to shoot a lot of the visuals there. There's a gas mask to symbolize, this sort of uprising and this anonymous figure who's leading this army, and she had the teddy bear that she named Ilu, which this is all a really long story, but Ilu is basically from the acronym ILU. That stands for Integrity, Love, and Unity. These are sort of like the three founding codes or principles of being a moonchild. So you get the plur, the peace, love, unity, respect sort of message blended in the new age sentiments of the moon children. That kind of coalesces into what Kerli's brand was really becoming. And so Ilu became like the mascot for the moon children. So she has that in the promotional artwork. The music video was all of her Estonian friends. It was filmed in a few nights in the forest. The sets were really beautiful, although she still had such a low budget. And I really do think Army of Love was quite a success for her. And it actually did do pretty well in the dance charts in the US. In fact, I think at one point it did get to #1 in 2011. So she saw some success in the dance world from that song, which was very nice. So we have all of this that's happening. Meanwhile, this is years after Love is Dead has been released. I probably am going to make a video where I talk more about her career and like the projection of it, because her career has spanned more than 10 years, but it's been 10 years that she's been really in the public eye. And it has been one bumpy road. And getting to Utopia has been a bumpy road. And now coming from Utopia and getting to her official sophomore album, because remember, Utopia is not an album, it's an EP, is another even more long and bumpy road. And I will make a video that addresses that probably in the very near future, as that takes us to the present day. But this is all the backstory of where Kerli is living in LA. She's working with all of these DJs. She collaborates with Switch. She collaborates with a producer, 78, who actually produced almost all of Utopia. So she's trying to get her hands onto the production element, and she definitely is experimenting with it. Some of these songs she just recorded, like Love Me or Leave Me, for example, in her bedroom using her own recording equipment. And she was, of course, not able to mix it herself, but she was able to get the almost mastered copy just completely in her bedroom. I mean, she really was, at the same time, really trying to hone her craft as a songwriter. She was really trying to build her songwriting chops, as she felt, and I don't necessarily agree with her on this, that Love is Dead songwriting-wise was not very strong, that she felt it was a little childish. I actually think Love is Dead is a lot more of a mature record than Utopia is, especially as far as songwriting is concerned. I hate to criticize Kerli because I do love her, but as a fan of someone's work, you also have to recognize when they do something that maybe isn't that strong. And I think the songwriting on Utopia could be possibly the weakest. The whole rollout of this was kind of co-opted and taken over by her record label because in December of 2012, Utopia leaked online the full album. And because of this, her label decided to cut their losses and make it an EP. As you know, EPs are a lot cheaper to create. And the record label was just basically really cheap with her and horrible with her. They had already delayed the album for a long time. They'd had it shelved since May of 2012. They could have released it that summer, and I really wish they had, because if they had, it would have never been leaked. They also could have released it in the fall or around December of 2012, and they would have cut a lot of their losses that way. But no, they decided to hold it and hold it and hold it, and finally release it in the spring of 2013 as an abridged version with very few songs. Very, very disappointing, this whole thing. And I know that Kerli, deep down, was very resentful towards Island for this, and that's why she left that record label. Even though she was very kind of quiet about that, she didn't want to talk about her frustration with it. You could tell she was very frustrated, and I would completely agree with her on that and understand. One thing a lot of people may be surprised to know about Kerli is that the song Skyscraper off of Demi Lovato's album Unbroken was actually written by Kerli, along with a few other songwriters that were in the room, but Kerli was one of the prominent ones to write this song, and it was written for this album, Utopia. Kerli then shopped it around as she was interested in also writing songs for other artists. She did do that for quite a few. Tarja Turunen from Finland also took a song called Immortal from Kerli and put it on her album, which Kerli then finally released her version on the Frankenweenie soundtrack that was released in fall of 2012 called I Feel Immortal. But Skyscraper was eventually shopped to Demi Lovato, and as you know, Demi Lovato was coming out of rehab. She was coming through a rebirth period where she was trying to create a new record, and Demi recorded it, and Kerli felt like it was a match made in heaven and told Demi she could have it. And it became Demi's song, and Kerli always feels very proud, like a proud mother, where she quotes herself as being Santa's little helper. She helped get the song in the right place, and it went to the person that needed it the most. And in that case, I do think it was wise. I mean, I've heard her rendition of it. It's beautiful. But Demi did a very beautiful job with the song, and it's a very big hit of hers. And it did give Kerli a little bit more recognition, which is also really awesome. Kerli has also written songs for Selena Gomez. There's a song called Ghost of You on Selena's album A Year Without Rain that was actually Scar Tissue, a demo written, well, not written by Kerli, let me correct this, recorded by Kerli as a demo. She did not write it. It was written by other songwriters. Okay, so let's talk about Utopia. Well, what do I not like about it? Well, first, before I get into what I don't like about it, I will just go through these songs. We have Can't Control the Kids, which is the first song. One of the highlight songs on this EP for me. It's very ecstatic, it's exuberant. She's singing about the youth and the sort of techie DIY sort of undertones that we have of we do things our own way. You can't control us. It almost could feel a little bit like an anti-government sort of message, although of course that's not where Kerli's going with this. But it's like the brainwashing of the media and all of this is like, you can't control us. We are going to rise above and we are unstoppable. And that ecstatic frenzy as it builds up is probably the best produced song on this album. I mean, it feels the most cathartic. It feels the most like what I think Utopia was really going for. Though there are a few other songs that go there, like Zero Gravity, but they're not on this EP officially, which is really unfortunate. We have The Lucky Ones, which lyrically is probably one of her weakest songs that she's ever created, basically because there isn't very much in the way of lyrics. And I understand that she really wanted the sound to take front and center stage, but the songwriting could have been so much stronger on this song, as it's very repetitive, and it's basically just her singing We Are the Lucky Ones over and over and over again. Lucky Ones, though, is inspired from a very deeply personal and mournful sort of situation where her best friend, Vespertine, discovered that he had testicular cancer. And Vespertine recovered from all of this with treatment, and she was so proud of him all along the way, and it sort of remotivated her to create this song. It was one of the last songs she made for Utopia, and it was released as the official first single from this album in October of 2012. The Lucky Ones has a very sort of generic music video. It's probably the most generic of any Kerli's music videos, in my opinion, just because it doesn't feel like Kerli to that much of an extent. It has this typical LA city diva dance sort of scene and vibe, which is cute, but it just doesn't feel like what Kerli really was. I mean, I understand that this music video was something that she actually had her label's support to make and was something that she had a lot more resources for, but you could tell that her label was trying to brand her as someone like Kesha or as someone like a lot of other, dance acts that were somewhat getting big. Nothing against those acts, but it's not Kerli. I appreciate that she experimented with it, but I know that now she doesn't really view that as who she really is. The Lucky Ones, though, is a very motivational video. It's got shots of people in a club and a child who feels as though there's no way to break out, and he has this superhero cape, and he is overcoming his adversities. It's all a little bit too vague for me, and again, unfortunately, very forgettable. Love Me or Leave Me is another highlight moment, and I already said this song was basically written in her bedroom. She just is at the piano writing this very beautiful ballad where we really do get to hear Kerli's vocal chops for the only time on this record. She's singing about a relationship that is at a point where she doesn't want to deal with anyone's BS. Love me or leave me, take me or leave me. I've got to let you go, or please let me go because I don't want to deal with this anymore. We all reach that point in a relationship where we can't take this sort of tension in the room that is palpable, that, we don't know who feels what anymore. We're not communicating. Sitting here watching you go, for all I know, this could be it. It's been a while since you kissed me like you mean it. Been working out, you smell so good. It's not for me. I don't mean to push you, but you say that you don't feel it. If you can tell that the chemistry is lost, then that needs to be addressed. You can't just let this linger and grow into some kind of tumor. So please just let me go. Love me or leave me, quit me or keep me. Whatever it is you're feeling, I just need to know. I can definitely understand the sentiment now that I've been dating a lot recently as well, is that just please let me know. Please be honest and open, because that's all I'm ever asking. It's okay if you don't feel this anymore. I understand how feelings change over time. Don't be afraid to tell me, because the worst thing is when you let someone just hang by a thread and never let them in on how you really feel, and you're wasting not only their time, but your own time as well. So don't put yourself into this situation. It's very simplistic. It's just her at the piano, but it's a very sincere, beautiful melody. And although I don't necessarily think it's as strong as any of the ballads on Love Is Dead, I do appreciate the earnesty and the sincerity of this song. Sugar is the fourth song on this EP. I don't know how else to put this, but it's just not Kerli. Sugar is Britney Spears. Sugar is an EDM artist that DJ Switch, who was the one who worked with her on this song, is just lacking of anything that is what Kerli is. The song is basically a lot of sexual innuendos, talking about and likening candy to sex. It's especially now a little difficult for me to say this song as it pertains to Kerli. Now, you do have to remember that, especially at this time, bubble goth was a term, I talk about it in my Love Is Dead review, that she embraced. So bubble goth does mean that she would possibly be a little bit bubblegum, but it would be ironic. The trouble with Sugar is it doesn't feel ironic. It feels like it's trying too hard. And the worst part of this for me is that there are songs that were excluded from this EP, like songs like Kaleidoscope and My Last Breath, that are so much stronger and also so much more meaningful than this song. And yet this is the song that is included on an already very short EP. This, if anything, is the one song to scrap from this EP together. There's another song called Speed Limit that I also agree did not deserve to be on the EP that did get scrapped. It's very generic. It's a great sort of experimental song for Kerli trying to create a pop song, but it comes across as way too formulaic. It's like Bonnie McKee level of formulaic pop music. And if you know Bonnie McKee, she writes a lot of Katy Perry hits. Speed Limit is very generic, and it didn't deserve to be on this EP, but Sugar definitely didn't either. And there's another song, Supergirl. Why couldn't Supergirl be on this album? Supergirl is like the antithesis of Sugar. It's this meaningful feminist ballad which she's pulling from her childhood, where she sings about her mother and the strength she saw her mother have facing domestic abuse. likening her to a Supergirl. It's a beautiful, emotive, powerful pop song, and it really should have been employed on this EP, and it's definitely the biggest loss, along with Kaleidoscope. So Sugar, I know it's cute and it's a little sexy, and it does have interesting production. It's got a lot of interesting samples and overlays. It's very glitchy, and it is unique, but it also is lacking anything of the character or integrity of what Kerli is. It's funny that Kerli talks about Love is Dead sometimes as being not fully fleshed songwriting, and yet it's songs like Sugar that's the proper direction to be going. Personally, I mean, remember, this is all just personal opinion. I'm sure, and I know there are some Kerli fans who loved Kerli doing this dance stuff. You should know that I'm just obviously not a fan of this music. I like Kerli when she's doing a little bit more of electro, ambient, classical dance, a little bit industrial. She's just a little bit more enigmatic and a little dark. And Sugar, to me, I appreciate it for being experimental, but it basically just feels like a Switch song, and Kerli just was giving the vocals. And I have a feeling that the reason why the Switch song was included on this EP was because it was a Switch song, and they needed to make sure that they gave Switch his pay. That's probably the only reason why this song made it onto the EP over other songs that Kerli produced with 78. Again, this is her label screwing her over. Here and Now definitely redeems this EP a little bit more. Here and Now is Edm Rave Ecstasy. She's singing about being in the moment and celebrating the here and now. I must admit, I would love to go to a rave and have fun to this song because it definitely feels cathartic. It feels like a Miami club song, but it feels lifted and elevated. And this song does elevate you, which is something that Kerli really, really wanted to do with this EP. It's just, like the title Utopia, give you this ecstatic escape from the darkness which was surrounding her. And I can understand. She went through a lot growing up as a teenager and a young adult. I can understand why she wanted to celebrate the light. It needed to happen. I'm not saying that this is all stuff that was necessarily a misstep. Everything happens for a reason. But it's just looking back, it's not going to be my favorite highlight of her career. For me. And I think for Kerli herself as well. I want to bounce to the beat of your breathing. I want to move to your rhythm and celebrate being alive. The lyrics are still not quite what I'd like, but they're getting a little bit more interesting. No, I wouldn't want to be anywhere but here, is basically the chorus. I do think that there's a little bit of the chorus sort of disintegrates a little bit with her voice. It's a problem I actually have a little bit with her song Spirit Animal, sort of falls into the same problem where the vocals get sort of overhauled and they just kind of loop and it feels a little bit forced and lazy. But I will forgive it because the backbone of the production of this song is very interesting. It has a real bass and groove to it, and it feels energetic, and that's what you want. It feels like what the lyrics are trying to give you. The last song on the EP is called Chemical, and this is a much shorter, to-the-point ballad that was produced by Brian Ziff, or Vespertine. This is a song inspired by that instant realization that a friendship might be something more. Open up my eyes and feel your heartbeat as we lay with your body pressed against mine. And I know this very moment, this will be till the end of time. This love is more than chemical. It feels unusual, and I can't get enough. There's something spiritual about this love, and it's not just things in my brain telling me and activating me and arousing me. There's something deeper. And that I do find to be sincere, a little underwhelming because it's so short, because it doesn't have as much weight to it, even though the lyrics are quite heavy, than Love Me or Leave Me does. But I think that's just because of the brevity of it. And I do kind of wish this song was a little bit longer. But I still do think it's a strong song that definitely deserved to be included on the EP. I mean, I am glad that her label did include the 2 ballads. Overall, Utopia, for an album that is supposed to be about utopia, like Björk's was, but in a very different way, I do think that it thematically matches up, but there is some darkness under there, like she said, like with Chemical and Love Me or Leave Me. But ultimately, this whole project just left me, if more hungry, for more of what I really wanted from Kerli. It's been so long just waiting for her to release Love is Dead, real follow-up. And I talk about this in the Love is Dead review, and I also talk about it in my 2018 predictions video, which leads me into where I want to just mention that, yes, so Kerli has admitted that this time in LA that she spent, especially in the Utopia songwriting phase, She felt as though she was being told what to do and was working way too hard and not actually listening to herself enough, not listening to her own instinct. She kind of feels as though the Utopia era was her being like a bird and looking at all the shiny things and flocking to them, thinking that this was the direction her career needed to go, thinking that to validate herself as an artist, she had to work with all these people, she had to work with this certain record label, she had to be in the system to some extent. She had to be in LA, a city that she does live in predominantly during the winter. And girl, I don't blame you because Estonia is cold as anything in the winter. But she definitely in the summers has been fleeing LA for Estonia since 2015 when she really started working on her second full-length album. Utopia is a testament to experimentation and to growth, but it is also that yin and yang of her personality coming through, which is also important. You know, Love is Dead is the antithesis of Utopia, and I feel like her next album is going to be the antithesis of Utopia again, but it's not going to be Love is Dead either. It's probably going to be a little bit more of a blend of Utopia and Love is Dead, but also going in a completely different direction as well. We already have a taste of that with the newer singles that she's released in the last 2 years, which I love, by the way. And I definitely think are redemptions from the work that she did in the more sort of EDM sort of world. She's released a lot of stuff with an Australian DJ named Tie Dye. She also collaborated with him a lot during this era, and they were an interesting duo. But again, it just felt like she was just providing vocals to beats and songs that really weren't hers. And I felt a little bit of that lack of depth to a large degree. But don't get me wrong. There are songs on this EP like Can't Control the Kids and Love Me or Leave Me that do feel like standout songs. I mean, even the Lucky Ones, you could argue, it's not a bad song. It's well produced, it's very danceable, it's very interesting, and it does give you the feeling of lifted ecstasy, as well as zero gravity. I'd be interested to know, any Moon Children, in the comments what you think about this album. Because I do believe that there are kind of two different kinds of Moon Children now, because a lot of people were like, this isn't like Love is Dead, this isn't alternative rock or whatever, you know, ambient, this isn't anything like what you were doing before. This is EDM, which is different. And then there are fans who came on board during the Utopia era and who aren't really liking Love is Dead, and who also won't probably like some of her newer stuff, because some of her newer stuff is going a little bit back into that direction. So it's a bit of an interesting sort of juxtaposition in her fan group now, because she released 2 albums that are almost polar opposites. And it's very interesting to see where her career is going. But mark my words, her official return to form will be her second studio album. Utopia, in my mind, this is personally just my opinion, was just something that needed to happen along the way. It was a stepping stone. It gave her a lot of chances to learn about her songwriting skills and also to forge connections in the industry. And it also gave her a chance to explore with different elements of production and learn about different equipment and learn more about the ins and outs of releasing your own music. And it gave her the tools that she needed. It all needed to happen. But it's definitely a blip in the road, in my opinion. Though, again, I wouldn't be reviewing this if I thought it was terrible. Okay? I mean, I do love Kerli, and I definitely don't hold this to that high regard. And I love Love is Dead, and I love a lot of her unreleased stuff. And I will make a video about a lot of her unreleased music that's not attached to Utopia. But I just really wish this had been held as a full album and she was able to release it like that, because then it would have at least felt cohesive and like the project came to its full conclusion. Because right now it was sort of just left hanging. It is what it is, but careers in the music industry, it's difficult to navigate. And this is, if anything, just a lesson to a lot of different ways that the music industry works. It's very interesting to follow her career, but I am very excited for where she's heading, and I am very excited for her second album, which I do firmly believe is coming between this day and December 31st, 2018. Sometime in there, we have a release date, and it feels like it's never going to come because it's been so long, but it is coming. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I do plan on reviewing more Kerli. I'm going to review her unreleased music from the Love is Dead era. She has like literally 30 or 40 songs there that I could talk about. And I also possibly may make a video just talking about the lead up to her current second album, and I'll talk about her singles along the way as I do that. That may be the next Kerli video I make, actually. So I hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. Integrity, love, and unity, as Kerli always said. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.
I wanna be